Weekly update of the New York softs market: sugar, coffee, cocoa, cotton, and rich spots for critical point Tuesday, August 27, 8:49 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, you're looking at the weekly continuous spot prompt chart. Market is up, bumping its head against this potential trend line from the last level 2 back to the last minor long-term top. Interesting development here. Maybe it bumps its head, come down. Maybe it's time for a breakout. Maybe it's telling us it's base building now for a long-term bottom. However, a level 1 top is due now in the next few weeks. That's the most important kind of top during a year. Occurs 4, 5, 6 times a year. It can easily roll down, and since this is a level 2 and went lower than a level 1, ideally, it comes all the way back and lower still. I'm not convinced we're dealing with an ideal market. I also think it's getting late enough that we could have some what I call late seasonal demand. Other people will say it's on-time seasonal demand. In other words, demand going into the year-end holidays for cooking and candies and all that fun stuff. This weekly indicator acting quite bullish here, in my opinion. Widening spread, suggesting chance for lingering near-term upside momentum next 1 to 3 weeks, with the model saying, why, yes, it can stay up 1 to 3 weeks. Okay. It's not overbought. It has room to go up. There's room to rally. It is, however, touching mid-range. Something could go wrong and make an abrupt downturn, but this looks so bullish that it's likely to go above it. But it is something to watch out for, that this might stall out. It might not be all that good of a bullish run. I do not believe going into this level 1 top it's going to rally above the 20.78 level. If it does, I think that would be just about it, and they'd have to pull it back some. And again, we may be looking at some base building. We may be looking at a long-term bottom for sugar here. We'll talk about that in a minute or two. But that's our sugar forecast. Now, as we zoom inside of this, it is due, however, for a level 3 setback by next week, perhaps even into the following week. So it could top this week on into early next, mid-next, and set back. All I can tell you is it looks like there's a wave of selling coming by next week. It's just a matter, does it start this week and into next week? Does it wait until next week? And it could even delay and extend into the following. That's your for this weekly chart, that's your pops and drops that you see in this weekly chart, these level 3s. If you put it under a daily chart, they look more important. They're more drawn out. They look more dramatic, okay? And they're really just how we do business during a month. At the moment, this level 1 is, in theory, the more important kind of rally during a year, but it's rallying from a level 2, so it's not quite as important as it could be. Again, it could be sluggish here, but it is fascinating that we can get a little more upside in coming weeks here for sugar, even though it's supposed to set back by next week. All right, next up, we want to look at the coffee market, and this one does have some potential on the crop side, global side, weather side, okay, supply side, and there can be some evidence that demand is actually improving as well. And my stance on commodity indexes is they're either bottoming now or will bottom sometime now into early next year. I had thought October into early next year, but some of these major indexes can be bottoming now long term, and they can move higher into 2026, and it can move as much as 29% higher, which means it can be very similar to what I'm expecting for a stock market up move into 2026. I think this can hinge upon the idea that the Fed Reserve lowers rates, changes the attitude of all this global speculation stuff. There's been bearish commodities beating on inflation, that finally lowering interest rates, they've decided the war on inflation is over, okay? And at least back away from their selling. They might not immediately buy. There may not be a reason to launch a very nice bull market. But as the economies grow, and the forecast is for growing economies next year and the following year, and then, of course, we have major long-term stuff for the economy and stock market that's bullish all the way into 2030. This is just a fluctuation inside of that. It just looks good to me. And so this can add support even to some of these crop-type markets. When we might have enough supply, it can still provide some support and work prices a bit higher. For the coffee market, we can also have, on top of that, we may have a crop issue, supply issue. At the moment, what the model's looking at, however, is slanting towards what is the price doing? What does the market really want to do? And what it's saying is it's kind of acknowledging that crop problem, but it's not so sure it's that serious. It's kind of taking an attitude, if it's serious, we'll pay him higher later. Prove it to us. If we have to get dragged in, it's fine, but we're not going to try to load up on coffee and create a big explosion. I think part of that reason is demand isn't necessarily all that great. I don't think we're going to see record amounts of demand for coffee for a very long time. I think it's kind of flipping back to being what is really an old commodity. All right. I will never drink more coffee than I drink today, and I drink the least amount I have in 30 or 40 years, and I'm not going to cut it back. I'm at my minimum, been there for 10 years now, but I'm not going to increase it. And the global population isn't going to grow that fast, and neither will the economies. I think we got to acknowledge the model might be on the right track. Of a level 1 top due now in the next few weeks, going to pull it back for level 2, and it may still go higher for another level 2, which would give us a clue to be even higher still for another level 1. That's where things could be exciting and explosive maybe. If we got this crop issue, it may be we're not going to see the real bullishness to sometime next year, even late next year. I don't know. But right at the moment, I'm not seeing this screen double green light thing. Buy. I'm just not seeing it, okay? All right, right at the moment, I think next week we'll see coffee actually slip back for a level 3 for some of this fluctuations, pops and drops. But for the moment, it is up. We got to acknowledge that. But if it starts taking out weekly lows and we can get a decent down week, you really have to consider you got that level 1 top. It's coming down into a level 2 bottom. Then we have to reevaluate whether it's just going to go higher still, or is it actually putting in a minor long-term top or something even more important. So we'll evaluate that, and I'll discuss that in a moment here. Let's move on to the cocoa. By the way, this indicator is acting quite bullish, warning a chance of going up the next 1 to 3 weeks. The model's saying that's fine, it can do that. But it's also overbought, saying it could top at any time now, and the model's saying, yep, that's fine too. Okay, we might have done enough here. All right, so we basically, for me, the model's saying, got to wait for some kind of sign of weakness here, then jump on it, say we got a level 1 top, be bearish for a little while, then reevaluate. We're going to be a little careful of being just too bearish here and being outright bearish. There's no reason to do that. Now, cocoa market, still no sign of level 1 top. But it really should top for a level 1, and it really should set back here into a level 1, and I think it's just really trading range bound here, and I don't think it's ready to do any massive great bear market, but I think it is in a long-term bear market. I also think economic-wise, business-wise, mechanic-wise, it's going to take quite a while to build those supplies and bring down cocoa. Now, cocoa could start down anyways before you actually build those supplies. That'll be a bet. The supplies will be there eventually. Now, on a level 3 basis, it should really top this week and be down into next week. And then maybe it goes higher still for a late level 1. But it might actually be the start of something that the level 3s will create an overall zigzag down into a level 1 bottom. And yes, we also have to consider what about demand going into the year-end holidays. Other than that, nothing really exciting to talk about. Cotton market probably topping for level 1 here. I think it's going to backpedal, stall out. I think it's gone the lowest it's going, maybe all the way into next year. But at the same time, this level 1 can take it lower still. And harvest, of course, is later than the other commodities and more drawn out, I believe. And there's a lot of other things that can go on here. But I do think even the fashion industry is probably going to find better demand, better prices, and it'll trickle next year, and it'll trickle back into the cotton market as well. And so I have to be a little optimistic that we can get something bullish going here in the next couple of years, even for cotton, but we're not right today. I think it's probably range bound. It's pulling back for level 3 now, and can bottom this week or next for level 3. It might bottom near the 5-week average. I find it difficult why it has to go on down to 60, but it may yet do that, okay? Nothing else to say there. Nothing exciting and good insight. Let's go for the long term here on the sugar market. And, of course, it met our long-term downside target. We set that way back here, so we're very proud of that. It can go lower than that. It has time to go lower. And it's not time yet to bottom long term, but I'm looking for reasons now that it bottoms earlier than I think, at least on a price perspective. It may not rally well enough until it actually puts in the true time perspective of how long does it take to rebalance some of this supply and demand. This indicator is acting bullish, and it is warning that we have seen some long-term undervaluation, cheap, oversold, that kind of stuff. But it may have to still go a little lower anyways and chill out in here, but I do think we'll see higher sugar prices in 2025, okay? On the coffee market, looks a little more explosive on this. It's getting awfully close to this. We may learn that if it goes to record high, it's over and done with for several years, and we pop in a major top there. But we also may learn that later on that it's still higher later this decade after all. In theory, it should not be any higher for the rest of this decade. But there's some other scenarios going on here where some of these minor long terms can disrupt the major long term. And some of this, it does relate to climate change. And some of this is built-in inflation. And some of this is resetting at higher price levels, and will reset in the sense of growing economies next year and the following year. The demand may improve here more than what I'm thinking right at the moment. This little indicator trying to turn up, trying to act bullish here until we get a significant down month, or maybe 2 or 3 down months over a period of 2 to 5 months of trading. We may have a difficult time really believing that we've got a long-term top. We may need some weakness for a while here to help prove that, but what it should be doing is topping anywhere within this range, so now and within this range, and pulling back into this range for a bottom. And if it can't go all the way back to here, which is ideally what it should do, but we don't think we're really dealing with an ideal long-term bearish scene, and not that bearish in other words, it may just be rebounding here. We may be looking at more serious global problems as we look out over the next few years that are going to make this far more bullish, and we do think we're setting up for better economies anyways. So we may improve the demand at the same time we get a few more bullish, shocking supply side things, tighten things up and make things more bullish. On the cocoa market, same story. It can be bearish actually for the rest of this decade. It may be bearish only for a minor long-term fluctuation, then up, then down again, then up and down over the next several years. Don't know. I cannot call a minor long-term bottom, even though it's meeting minimum time requirements. It doesn't seem to be meeting the best conditions. I think there's probably lower cocoa prices coming later. Maybe we got to wait to next year. I don't know. This acting quite bearish there. Cocoa is at the bottom of my list of having an understanding how well this bear market will work right now. All right, cotton market. This one oversold, undervalued, is cheap, it's ridiculous, and yet it may remain that way for months here, similar to what we're looking at some of the grains. But I do think it picks its head up somewhat next year and will probably be higher in 2026. And I do think we're vulnerable for some kind of a crop problem, climate issue here coming up. But I also think we can see a little better demand as these economies grow here. At least from a trader's point of view, though, there ought to be more upside trading in this area and here over coming months, several months, a year, something like this. And we may still get something more explosive in 2026. But right today, the trend is still down. There's no sign of a long-term bottom here. I've got to wait. I've got to be patient on that. But I think it's low enough priced. I think it's getting tired of going down. It does. The best move is over for you bears. But long-term, it's still intact. It's still a long-term bear market. Keep in mind, commodity indexes can bottom now into early next year, and they can be up in 25, 2026. Keep in mind, economies are going to do better in 25, 26. Keep in mind, more global trade, more imports, more exports, more business. Keep in mind, the stock market is going to do much better, and it's going to make people feel happy-dappy around the world. And keep in mind, interest rates are going to come down. It's going to make people feel much better, and therefore people are also running businesses. Therefore, the businesses will feel much better. We've got better times are coming. Global elections could throw a headwind in there, even a monkey wrench into the machine, and more so with the U.S. election. But the best forecast is probably Harris is going to win, and it's probably the better, safer way of going, even though there might be some good things that other side could do. The problem is there's too many bad things and two things that could just be a little too disruptive and a price that we're unwilling to pay to make something better. And frankly, we don't have to do any of that. We can do other things. And I think we're going to take that attitude. So if it goes that way, I think that's yet another green light to be optimistic in 2025, 26. Otherwise, going the other side could really create some serious problems, especially if we get into tariffs. We may yet see crashing commodities, believe it or not, more likely exploding inflationary, and then they're going to crash because we just destroyed our economy over it. And even if we didn't, we would destroy the commodity higher prices by destroying the economy by raising interest rates too. I don't see anything. I don't see any of that. It's not going to work. Harris wins. World will get by. The elections will do good enough. The policy change will do good enough. We're going to start moving away from neoliberalism and try some other things here. We'll go back to globalization and global trade, but we're going to measure it. We're going to negotiate it. We're going to be more careful about it. We're going to do it differently. And overall, everything's going to grow and we're going to be okay here on this demand situation. And then throw on top all this climate change, which things can get worse into 2030s, maybe 2040s, get better for a few decades. But I now, compared to 30 years ago, when I started studying climate seriously, cyclically, I said it could get much better later this century, and then maybe better for many centuries. Now I'm thinking it might get worse for many centuries, but at least later this century, things won't get as better as I thought, okay? So plenty of issues that'll be underlying here year to year now, in all the way into coming decades on this climate change and crop production stuff. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future results. Dollar index moving down nicely and should also support this whole bullish economic, bullish long-term commodity scenario. Thank you, Beth.